Today on the show, the Democrats propose a new bill, a bizarre bill, amidst the shutdown.
Keeping you informed and engaged, now more than ever. This is Sekulow. We want to hear from you. Share and post your comments or call 1-800-684-3110. And now your host, Logan Sekulow.
Welcome to Sekulow. Fix my collar here, Will. I got to, look good on air here. Will Haynes in studio, Jordan Sekulow in studio. We're going to be joined again by Jeff Balaban. We got another update from Israel coming for you, so you're going to like this one. This is actually a big win from the ACLJ, so we're excited to share that. Usually we don't have two hits from Israel back to back, but today is a very special day for our team at ACLJ Jerusalem and also at ACLJ here in the States. So that's going to be one. If you've been following sort of the rise in anti-Semitism, obviously on college campuses, we got a victory to report. So that's going to be a lot of fun coming up later. Phone lines are open for you at 1-800-684-3110. We're looking at all the different topics we could discuss today. And the one that kind of jumped out is obviously there is pain. There is pain going right now if you are a member of the government, if you are working for the government, maybe you've been furloughed, maybe your paychecks are being held. And the Republicans, of course, there was another opportunity to move forward. The Democrats once again shut it down. This is how many attempts? The 13th, 12th attempt?
Yeah, that the Democrats decided not to reopen the government with a clean continuing resolution.
And not even really discuss it, not even have any sort of conversation. So that's what's happening. Of course, the Democrats will say it's the Republicans. Republicans will say it's the Democrats. And the Republicans put a point together and said, hey, how about we start paying people, though?
That's right. So Senator Ron Johnson is expected to have a vote today on a bill which would pay federal employees that are still having to work, because there are those that are furloughed, that are at home, that aren't going to work. But then there are those, you think about the air traffic control, the military, people that still have to show up and are not going to be receiving a paycheck this Friday when payday rolls around. And so he put together a bill that those that are still having to show up should be getting paid for that. The Democrats are trying to frame that as, well, then the president gets to pick who's essential and who's not. He gets to pick who's getting paid and who's not, which is a ridiculous argument in and of itself. But now the Democrats came up with two kind of competing alternatives to Senator Johnson's
they can't
bill.
Just say yes, that's a good idea.
Right, they can't do that, and then they can't also look like they didn't come up with something on their own.
Right.
So one is the most bizarre thing that I think I've seen proposed by a Democrat, and they proposed a lot because someone
that's saying a lot. Well,
someone thought this is a really good idea, and it's going to make us look better throughout this shutdown process. This comes out of Senator Gary Peters from Michigan. He's already, we have the text, you can see it on the screen of this bill. He's planning to announce today, or to drop at the Senate today, that would pay all federal employees, so every single one, 100%, from the start of the shutdown up until when that bill that you see on the screen is enacted. So essentially, hitting the reset button on the government shutdown.
Reopen, close.
We're going to pay everybody, and then you get your back pay, your one or two missed paychecks throughout this process, Jordan. But then immediately you're back at zero. You're still nervous for your family. You're still worried about it.
It opens a wild precedent.
A horrendous precedent to open, because what it does is allows the government to operate at 100% when Congress has not passed a budget, because now you're paying for everyone, and because you have to do it every couple weeks, you're having to go back and vote. And if they're trying to pressure Republicans into doing this, say all these people need their paychecks, instead of Republicans saying they'd all be getting their back pay right now if you signed on with the majority party who controls the House, the Senate, and the White House continuing resolution, which, by the way, adds nothing new to what was already passed as law a year ago. So no new Republican plans. Just keep things as they are. You don't have to start a precedent of funding the government, but it's technically shut down.
Yeah, the thing is, like, you could
do that forever.
You could literally keep the government closed and shut down forever, but fully paid. But then, of course, some of your services aren't getting done. It could be a disaster that they're not thinking of long term, or maybe they are, and maybe that's what they want. Phone lines are open for you at 1-800-684-3110. What do you think about this? We got more coming up as well. But again, support the work of the ACLJ. Can never be a more important time than to support free speech right now than at aclj.org.
The Senate could vote this week on the bill from Republican Senator Ron Johnson to pay essential federal employees during the government shutdown. They're not on furlough, but instead they are working without paychecks.
We forced federal workers to work. We call them accepted, but these are the essential workers, the people that pay your Social Security, federal law enforcement, military, that kind. We force these people to work, and we're not going to give them a paycheck. By the way, there's already a law that we will pay them back pay once the federal government gets reopened. We've got appropriation bills. So this is just a charade. It's a very destructive charade. It's, people are playing games with people's lives. TSA agents shouldn't have to go to food banks. You shouldn't have, as a air traffic controller, drive DoorDash to pay tuition for your daughter. But that's what we're forcing federal employees to do.
I'm in favor of paying the troops. I'm in favor of paying all of the employees that are currently working. And if that procedure or that vote comes before us next week, which I think there's a chance that it will, I will support that. I voted to get onto the defense appropriation bill last week, which means moving forward towards opening the government.
Utterly irresponsible. And this is visiting pain on a whole lot of federal workers for no point whatsoever, other than to throw a political temper tantrum and for Chuck Schumer to prove to his left-wing base that he really, really, really hates Donald Trump. This needs to end. Later today, I'm going to vote for the 12th time Republicans will vote to reopen the government. And at least 11 times in a row, the Democrats keep voting to keep it shut down. They need to end this game.
It's absolutely ridiculous. If they're going to work, we just pay their salary. This is across the board. Whether I like the agency they work for or not, it's anybody who's being forced to work by law. We just give them a paycheck. Just makes perfect sense. Again, it'll just be so unbelievably disappointing if Democrats won't even support that.
Welcome back to Sekulow. We are taking your phone calls at 1-800-684-3110. If you have your on hold, stay on hold, and we'll get to you. Let's kind of reset what's going on, because there's a lot of people who are just joining us right now, especially on our YouTube channel. Sometimes it takes a minute for YouTube to populate across the world, and right now we know a lot of you are joining, and they go, what could be, Will? That big, interesting, bizarre, I think as I said in the tease, proposal, and the proposal really is to shut down, or in the shutdown for about 5 minutes, enough for everyone to sign some paychecks, and then shut it down real quick. So that's essentially really making the shutdown null and void, except for the services that affect people.
Well, and as we've seen, the Democrats have failed to advance the end of the shutdown 12 times now. And so there are some people trying to come up with alternatives, because the politics that they're playing in Washington are affecting real people's lives across America. And so Senator Johnson out of Wisconsin had a bill that would pay those that still have to come to work because they're forced to, because it's essential jobs, air traffic control, the military, Social Security. That doesn't end, so someone's got to be there to process that. But those people processing the paychecks of Social Security are not getting paid themselves. His bill would pay those that are still forced to work even while the government is shut down. The Democrats won't go for that because they want to inflict as much pain to try to get Republicans to cave and to give into their demands, instead of passing the same continuing resolution that was passed last year and many times before that. But so they're like, we got to come up with our own counterpoint, right?
Because that's just too good.
Exactly. So there's the one that really caught my eye is from Senator Gary Peters out of Michigan. Oh, and he has a proposal that would pay all federal employees, so 100% of the government, from the day that the shutdown started to today, or whenever that bill passes.
Yeah. So 23 days ago, or 24.
So for most people, that would be either one or two paychecks they're going to receive if this were to get enacted. Now, also, he doesn't really want it to go through, because he's not putting it to a normal floor vote. He's forcing it through unanimous consent, which try getting 100 people. Right. That would be every senator would have to agree to move forward.
You have to get 100% of the U.S. Senate on a piece of legislation, say we'll pay everybody for 2 weeks. And by the way, we'll come back again in 2 weeks and have to pay them again, or else you'll be the bad. And then what is the impetus for ending the shutdown then if you are a Democrat, if you can now pay the entire bureaucracy, which you love, tell the OMB they can't furlough any more people, which is, again, not the role of Congress. The executive branch, again, executes the laws that they pass. And then at the same time, they will try to use it against Republicans to say in ads, see, we had a bill to pay you to make sure your loved one who worked for the federal government was paid. They voted no. But what they're not telling you the truth is you'd be having this fight every 2 weeks, which means you would never get to an end of a shutdown. And any federal employee right now who has been there at least since Trump 45, so President Trump's first term, has been through a shutdown longer than this. Now it's getting closer, but it was 35 days. And I think we're at day 23 right now. So I think they've been through it. They know they got their back pay. I think it's when you start getting close to the day 30, if it looks like no movement, you got to push on something like what Ron Johnson is proposing and not be scared into thinking that you've got to vote for this Democrat proposal because of what ads they must run against you.
Well, and here's the other.
The Democrats know right now it's hurting them. They tried to make it the Trump shutdown. It's been the Schumer shutdown since day one. No one believes it's Trump.
When you start looking at also, Jordan, when you get to over 30 days in, then you start running up with almost every single employee having an issue with a mortgage, with a credit card bill, with those things that are on 30-day revolving payments. That starts coming up, not just for, obviously it can be at any point. I'm sure people, the very first point during the shutdown had that arising, but then you've reached 100% of the federal government are starting to have those issues. Then they really start hearing from their constituents and from those that are upset that you're not paying us. Yes, we'll get it all back pay, but that starts messing up. And we know banks are actually working with the customers because it isn't their fault. It is the fault of the federal government. But you start getting concerned about, is this going to affect my credit score? Is this going to affect my ability to help my family, to pay for other things, to get a loan in the future? And that is really what you're starting to look at when you get up on that 30-day deadline.
I want to take a phone call because it is someone who is affected. Let's go to Mark, who's calling in Oklahoma. Watch it on Facebook. Mark, go ahead.
Hey, guys. Thanks for all that you do. Today,
thank you for calling.
I woke up. It's my 13-year anniversary for the Federal Aviation Administration as an air traffic controller. And I woke up to a leave and earnings statement that said zero. My last paycheck that I received was a little over 20% lower than the previous one. The one that I'm supposed to get this coming Tuesday will say $0 on it. I have been in the agency now 13 years. That means this is the third shutdown that I've been through. I'm sick and tired of being used as a political pawn, regardless of what side of the aisle people are on. I don't ask who's on the airplanes that I control. It doesn't matter whether I've worked President Biden or President Trump or President Obama on Air Force One. I do my job, and I have to be right 100% of the time. And if I'm not right, then you guys get to watch the President of the United States hold a press conference.
Right. Yeah. Look, Mark, I think a lot of people are feeling the frustrations and the concerns you are. So I wanted to take your call. I saw you calling in. I said, I want to hear from you because, look, everyone needs air traffic control.
The two top areas where people wish we could just get the payments to is military and FAA because of our transportation needs, which would then cover you,
the holidays are coming.
Unfortunately, we know is that these are new proposals now. Someone like Ron Johnson would want to do that because he's having to go. The FAA is having to go in, and then the military is having to go in and say, if you are working right now, you should be getting paid. And that would then take care of your situation, Mark, and all the other air traffic controllers, which we realized very quickly when they tried to cut the size and use more tech, that you were not at the point yet where you still didn't need this full bank of FA folks. So yes, you are doing very difficult jobs. I put you almost in the realm of like service, like military, because you're keeping people alive, keeping us alive. And I think people like that should be who we're focused on first. And Ron Johnson just took it a step further and said everybody who is still working. And that's not good enough for Democrats.
Well, and to that point also, Jordan, what Ron Johnson's proposal would do would help people like Mark, who, as he just said, has to be right 100% of the time. What he doesn't need in the back of his head is what's my next paycheck going to look like. And that's what these people that have to be
groceries tonight
100% of the time correct They now have an added stress put on them when they go to an already stressful job that is essential to the function and the infrastructure of this country. Not just leisure travel and business travel, but transportation, the logistics, the shipping of this country, everything. We have to think about that. They are putting an added stress. And what does Gary Peters' proposal do? It says, okay, you get your back pay, but that stress doesn't go away. You as an air traffic controller. You still now have to worry about the next paycheck. And you know what they're going to do, the Senate, after they vote on these today, or I'm sorry, not even vote, have unanimous consent? Go home for the weekend on Thursday. They're done.
They get
Close
paid.
up shop. They're still getting paid. And when people like Bernie Sanders are asked, he said, well,
They got
I mean,
families.
it's a good idea, but I mean, some of these people are younger, they have families, they can't afford to do that. You can't ask the Congress to do what we're asking the entire federal government to do. How dare you suggest that? And he's supposed to be the socialist. It's so quickly.
He's the socialist that ended up in multi-million-dollar book deals.
It's how they forget their ideology when you're asked them to do the same thing that they want the rest of the country to do.
No, listen, this ends easily by just passing the CR. The CR has nothing new, no new plans in it. That's why you don't hear anything from them about, oh, this is going to do this and that, because even when they try that, it's so quickly debunked because this legislation, the legislation that this is tied to, already passed. And in a continuing resolution, you can't add a bunch of stuff. So the Democrats just don't want to even give Republicans a win on a continuing resolution. That's not final. That's not like passing a final budget. This is how dedicated they are to the radical left of their party, that they think even the bureaucrats who usually vote Democrat, I think it's about 90%, they're willing to make sure, to put them in pain, in harm's way, because of politics, because they don't want to be outdone by the more liberal members of their party, like AOC and others who they think they are all in a fight with, especially Schumer.
And if you're someone like John Fetterman, who's actually speaking logically about this, what are they threatening to do? Primary him.
Yeah.
They're about to throw him out of their party. They're going to attempt to, because he thinks logically and doesn't want the people of Pennsylvania to be suffering the way
quickly he
now.
learned what the Democrat Party was really about, and you thought he was coming in as one of the most progressive guys. What he was coming in as one of the more common sense people, as a kind of to represent the working class, and as way more of an independent than they tried to portray him. And even sometimes the left portrayed him as this kind of like activist type, and instead he's a common sense guy.
All right,
who happens to support Israel, which is the great Satan of the Democrat Party.
We got phone lines open and want to hear from you. We're going to give you an update also on the ACLJ. We got some movement going on, some interesting cases you're going to want to get involved with as well by going to aclj.org, reading all the incredible content that we have available, watching all the content. It's available for free without a paywall, but only because you support financially and give generously at aclj.org.
A parent was refused transportation for the child attending a Christian school, which is a part of New Jersey law. Right. That the transportation, there's some school choice initiatives in this country that are not all just being able to use a voucher to go to a school, right, but sometimes it's okay, well, they can use transportation. They're violating the law in New Jersey. We're fighting that there. We're in court. We've got one where we're fighting for a teacher. We won for her. She was told, you can't be seen praying.
That means you'd have to, I guess, be always behind a closed door that doesn't have a window, that doesn't have, that can't be opened.
Right.
I mean, very bizarre. Be anywhere a student could see it. These policies like that are insane. I want to go back to New Jersey. The law provides for it. They say if you're eligible for the school choice program in New Jersey, the law provides for transportation. So this is a law that is, again, not being followed, that New Jersey taxpayers, including the family we represent, they're paying for these services and not receiving them. They're paying for the education, deciding to take advantage of a program to go to a private school. But the state says, but we'll still get that New Jersey student there. And they're not doing it. I mean, they have been dragging their feet on this, and the taxpayers are paying for something that isn't being done. And so think about it. It's not just the effect on the student, but the effect on that entire family who is just trying to give their student a better education, now having trouble just getting them to that school. It's them trying to force them back into their public school system by saying, well, if they just went to one of our schools, they'd get picked up, no problem.
That's right. And that teacher we talked about, we won that case in federal district court. Now it is on appeal because the school district is appealing it. Always be on the lookout. And if something seems off, contact the ACLJ, aclj.org/help. Or someone will be able to review it, be able to guide you through it, and none of that costs you a penny.
Welcome back to Sekulow. Phone lines are almost completely jammed. We got one line open at 1-800-684-3110. We'll definitely take some of those calls in this segment and later on. So stay on hold. If you're on hold, we will get to you. I did want to pivot a little bit to some of the work of the ACLJ. You know, as we said, as school season kind of kicked back in, and now we're honestly headed towards the back quarter of the year in terms of your semesters. You know, a lot of people are just back from fall break. You're going to have Christmas coming up, Thanksgiving, holidays. And with that, we know comes a lot of conversations and maybe a lot of issues at schools. And sometimes it involves the teachers. Sometimes it involves the teachers doing the right thing and being punished or reprimanded for just stating very obvious facts or being, promoting kindness. And that is sort of what happened here. We had a teacher who it was the morning after or of the Charlie Kirk assassination. It just came up in her class. People were talking about it. Obviously, it became something that people were addressing. And with that, they started talking about people who had been murdered, who had been assassinated for their beliefs, whether it was their political beliefs or their religious beliefs or whatever it may be.
Well, and this teacher was actually teaching curriculum that was approved by the school board, all of this entire curriculum was approved because this was on this day. It's an 8th grade history teacher in Hawaii. Federally funded schools that receive federal funds, have to teach about the Constitution on Constitution Day. That's a part of the federal law. So this was a curriculum talking about the Bill of Rights that had been approved to be taught. And they were talking about the First Amendment and talking about free speech. And the teacher was talking about how there is a difference between what is protected speech and not protected speech. A student.
This wasn't even a very controversial conversation.
It wasn't even
happening.
About controversy.
We should tell people like how it went down. So on this, she talked about that one, even hate speech on Constitution Day, which she says is protected to an extent. Like we don't have laws against hate speech like other countries, and that it's protected to an extent before it becomes incitement. And incitement's not. But again, we're talking to kids here, and it prompted a student, not the teacher. A student then raised their hand and referenced Charlie Kirk being killed for freedom of speech, for talking. And then the teacher just asked students to name other figures in American history.
Yeah, in somewhat pivoting.
Right.
Actually, pivoting the conversation. Pivoting to history. So brought up
Didn't have
JFK,
a discussion
brought
about
up
him.
Martin Luther King Jr.,
Abraham
Lincoln. So they have conversations. And in that conversation, someone mentioned the attempted assassination of President Trump, a student. And another student responded with something to the effect of, well, that wouldn't have been such of a bad thing.
Right.
And of course, that's an abhorrent thing to say about anyone that you hoped that assassination. Clearly, I mean, I'm sure we can know where that student's parents are politically. And the teacher's response was just to, again, de-escalate the situation.
Speech. You can't call for someone to die. That's not hate speech.
Yeah,
that's
and just
what I was talking about before.
We don't want anyone to be killed for their speech. And here's why. And gave what appears to be a very nuanced, bipartisan, not a political speech by any means.
A Republican or a Democrat,
anyone.
easily, or someone who's not even political.
A teacher who just doesn't want to really engage in
bring it
politics.
up on their own. She did not bring. This teacher did not bring this topic on herself.
So here's what happens: the school has a meeting with the social studies department, and in front of everybody says that there have been some incidents in certain classes that will be addressed, but teachers are not allowed to discuss, quote, controversial issues, and if that is brought up by a student, it must be shut down. Now, then later, the teacher was called into a one-on-one meeting with the administration, and the vice principal told the teacher that a parent of a student who wasn't even in the class called to complain and made it all about Charlie Kirk, not about the entire discussion and the things that were said even about President Trump. So then
which was really the moment of the shutting or moving on the conversation and having a discussion was actually about a student responding that it wouldn't have been bad for President Trump to have been assassinated. And clearly he was deciding to end this conversation and just say, no, that's not how we do things here in America.
So the teacher gets a summary of the conference memo stating what the issue is, a reprimand placed into their file, and that if controversial issues arise spontaneously without administration approval and parent notification, discussion must be put to a stop immediately. Failure to comply with the above directives may result in disciplinary action. So this is silencing free speech. It's silencing academic freedom, and we are not going to let this go through. We have now sent a demand letter to the Department of Education in Hawaii that this be removed from the teacher's file, that they support and promote the First Amendment and the freedoms that are here. But there are so many constitutional violations here, Jordan, that they're the chilling effect on free speech.
It also just
it's
doesn't feel
ridiculous.
All that controversial. It's not all that controversial that the news of the day is going to come up, and as a teacher, you have to know how to present the at least to respond appropriately. And what I'd like about this case, and sometimes, you have teachers that go rogue and do teach things that I think are very inappropriate, was this teacher really did the best they could to settle down the situation and move forward. But because likely it had to do with President Trump or Charlie Kirk or conservative-leaning people.
Do then?
Right.
She did pivot.
Yeah, no, they pivoted. As teachers, they pivoted. And exactly. Even the demand was kind of what was met, but that wasn't good enough, and that is clearly because of the topic.
Well, it's unconstitutionally vague, the directive, saying if something arises that's controversial, how subjective is that right there, Jordan? Just saying, you can't talk about the American Revolution, or anything in American history.
Slavery in America,
because
the
it
founding
could
of our
be
country.
deemed controversial.
The protest movement for women's their right to vote, the Constitution, the 3/5 provision. All these things that you should be learning about in history class as you go up in age could be deemed controversial 10 different ways. Our history itself has controversies. It's not, as our founding fathers knew, we're not perfect. We're going to strive to be the best we can be as a country in the world, and I think we are. But that means always striving towards getting better and trying to pursue happiness, never really reaching full happiness, but pursuing happiness as a goal instead of pursuing just power and government strength. But this idea, again, of just these schools going overboard, what will happen is we'll just have no history taught. Is that what they want?
That kind of has happened before.
Except for America's bad.
Remember that happened a few years ago where during COVID, it was like history classes got put on pause in Chicago because they were like, we don't know what kind of history is being taught here. With that being said, the ACLJ doesn't stop. And what is next is what is important, which is, of course, we are representing this teacher at zero cost to them because people like you donate and support. And that's great because you never know when you're going to need it yourself, because likely this teacher would not be able to afford, especially the legal minds that we have here, when you're able to be represented by the best of the best. But Jordan, I guess we could say what that next step is.
Yeah, so what we're doing is they have a November 6th deadline to reply to our demand letter that says you remove the memo and that confirmation that teachers will not be forced to silence students during approved lessons, and that instruction on constitutional rights will not be deemed controversial. So they can avoid a lawsuit.
2 weeks.
They have until November 6th. After that, we'll decide whether to file a formal complaint with the U.S. Department of Education, Office of Civil Rights, if they want to take it to the Trump DOE. Bring that on.
Bring it on. With that, we want you to support the work of the ACLJ. We have a second half hour coming up. Get it on however you get your live broadcast. ACLJ.org, YouTube, Rumble, whatever it may be. Find us there or later archived. But right now, this is the time to stand up for free speech and for religious liberty. And you can do that, be a part of the team, become an ACLJ supporter, an ACLJ monthly champion right now.
Welcome to the all-new ACLJ app. Expert analysis and insight big tech can't censor. Customize your news and get real-time alerts on the issues you care about. Advocacy is now at your fingertips. Take action, make a difference. Support the causes you care about with just one tap. Be the first to know. Breaking news alerts sent straight to your inbox. Everything you need, all in one place. Stay informed, stay empowered, download today.
We are so excited to announce the ACLJ's brand new app, completely redesigned to provide you with the best tools available to partner with us at the ACLJ. You can watch the daily Sekulow program, sign the petitions, customize your ACLJ membership experience, donate with the click of a button, and receive up-to-the-minute critical updates that the mainstream media can't censor. Just scan the QR code on your screen or go to your phone's app store, search ACLJ, and click install. It's that simple.
Keeping you informed and engaged, now more than ever. This is Sekulow. And now your host, Logan Sekulow.
Welcome back to Sekulow. Second half hour coming up. In the next segment, we're going to head over to ACLJ Jerusalem. We're going to get an update what's going on in Israel and some of our cases involving students who are having issues with anti-Semitism on campus. So we're going to have an update on that.
We have an interesting update coming through. This is from Jake Sherman, Punchbowl News, longtime D.C. reporter. But that House Democrats are calling their members back to D.C. next week, and that they are holding an in-person caucus meeting on Tuesday and events Wednesday. Okay. Now, this could be a sign that maybe there's some sort of breakthrough between Senate leadership and that maybe they've got a way forward on the shutdown. Okay. Or it could mean that they're going to come forward and have some sort of posturing. They think they have a next wave of a PR campaign. But it is very interesting they're calling the House back.
Because the House has already passed this, then all they would be doing is maybe introducing additional terms to this legislation that likely Republicans would oppose. So again, Logan, what they're trying to do through today's actions, which we already talked about how ridiculous that is, we'll back pay you until today, and then we'll have to go through this again. So we'll have shutdown all the time. The shutdown is turned on them. It did not turn on the president. It turned on Congress. It turned on the Dems because people realized they were the holdouts to passing just a really straightforward spending bill to keep the government open. And so now they're going to look like they're going to do some work by proposing some items, I believe, that won't go through because they wouldn't need to come back on their own unless it's Republicans coming back too because they think the Senate is going to send something back. So that's what we have to watch for. Are Republicans going to be back because they think the Senate is going to be sending something back with a few amendments that they have to then pass?
What I would almost look at also, Jordan, is that this is a moment for Hakeem Jeffries, who's had not the greatest rollout with this of trying to blame the Republicans. He's the one that said, we need Donald Trump to negotiate this out. Really kind of it flew in the face of their No King's Day messaging. But I am kind of with you. I think it's going to be now they're going to try to say, look, the entire Democrat caucus is here working. Where are the Republicans? Well, the answer to that is many Republicans are in their district trying to help people in their district navigate the shutdown. You've seen a lot of stories of that. And when there's no business to move forward in the House, then there isn't necessarily a reason for the House to be there because they actually did their job. They passed the clean CR, and it's in the hands of the Senate at this point. So Washington itself, at least legislatively, is kind of in a holding pattern because of the Senate.
All right, we got 2 minutes in this segment. I would like to take one call really quick because I don't want to stay on hold too long. Let's go to David. Let's try to settle some things for people. David in Nevada, who is watching on the Salem News Channel. It's a great place to watch us live. David, go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to know, because you guys mentioned about the military and the air traffic controllers and Social Security. Am I going to lose my Social Security? I've been working since I was 14.
David,
that's why I wanted to take you because I wanted to clear it up.
Clear to everybody.
Yep.
If you are receiving a Social Security check, you will be receiving that Social Security check. Timing shouldn't be affected because the Postal Service is fully. They have their own fund. That's why it's a public-private partnership. So they're able to keep working. And you're going to get your Social Security check. So anybody who tells you that that's not the case is lying. And they are doing it for political purposes, trying to scare you.
Or to scam you. So be careful.
And watch out for scams as well. For people that try to say, like, hey, we'll loan you what you'd get in Social Security if you didn't give us 20% back.
That is why I wanted to take your call, David, so early, because I wanted to put some people at ease. But also,
if you're getting Social Security and you're on it, you're getting that check the same you would as before.
But keep your eyes open for scammers, because this is when they thrive. So not that we give that kind of advice typically on the show, but I've seen it happen so many times. So David, thank you for calling. Thank you for watching on Salem News Channel. It's a great place to watch our show. Phone lines are open for you at 1-800-684-3110. We get back we are going to head over to ACLJ Jerusalem with Jeff Balaban. He was on yesterday talking about what's going on in Israel. But today we have an update of what happened here in America, which is a student who was suffering from anti-Semitism, the rise of anti-Semitism on college campuses. And we got some great results. That is because people like you support the ACLJ. We're going to talk about that coming up. And we have some more updates in just a moment. We'll be right back. Chairman Jim Jordan refers John Brennan to the DOJ for criminal prosecution.
That's right. So a letter went out from the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Jim Jordan, referring the former CIA director under President Obama, John Brennan, for criminal prosecution. It's addressed to Attorney General Pam Bondi, and it starts off with about referring significant evidence that former Director of Central Intelligence, John Brennan, knowingly made false statements during his transcribed interview before the committee on the judiciary on May 11th, 2023. And then it goes on to lay out in 6 pages very explicitly the statements in the transcribed interviews. Now, these weren't before a camera in a committee room. These were transcribed interviews, much more serious type setting. Yeah. It's not a time when you see members of Congress grandstanding, trying to use their 5 minutes to get a soundbite for their campaign. These are when they're doing real investigative work and when they are alleging he lied.
They were using information from the Steele dossier. And while they were testifying about the intelligence community assessment that they signed their name to, they said they had never seen the Steele dossier, even though it is being utilized in the actual document they submitted. It said Russia was, Trump was Russia's preferred candidate. All the stuff out of the dossier.
John Brennan, who repeatedly over the course of years told Congress that the CIA was opposed to including the Steele dossier. They didn't use the Steele dossier. They didn't like the Steele dossier. That, according to the internal documentation at the CIA, was demonstrably false. So what the director was telling the Judiciary Committee as they're conducting oversight is opposite of the truth. That's lying before Congress. It is misrepresenting the facts, and that is a crime.
Welcome back to Sekulow. Phone lines are open for you, and I want to hear from you in the next segment. We're going to take as many calls as we can, so go ahead and get on hold at 1-800-684-3110. Jeff Balaban, head of ACLJ Jerusalem, is joining us now. And though you're in Jerusalem, we're actually going to talk about something that's happening over here on the state side. Will, why don't you set us up a little bit, and then we'll kick it over to Jeff.
That's right, Jeff. As we've long done here at the ACLJ, we've tried and fought successfully for Jewish students that were facing anti-Semitism on campuses here in the United States. And this is a case that we talked about a while back, but that this was at New York Law School where a Jewish student came to the ACLJ, and we represented her through a formal complaint process about some of the posts by various anti-Israel and pro-Hamas groups on campus. Give us a little bit of background of what we did here at New York Law School.
Sure. So a student came to us, and let me say at the outset, there are many, many stories coming from this school as well as other schools. So this is just one student who had the courage and the foresight to call us up and ask if we could get involved. We heard out all of the situation. And then we brought it to the law school's attention, and this is after years of students trying to get the attention of the law school, especially after October 7th, when things got worse and worse, when it became commonplace at New York Law School, as among other places, other schools, other universities, for students to come into class and be surrounded by other students wearing keffiyehs, the symbol of showing support for the Hamas murderers, and they were globalize the intifada, which means to bring the violence to America itself. And they were terrified, and the school didn't react the way they wanted them to react. And then there were posts that went out publicly, and some of them seemed to have the schools imprimatur. And so we brought this to the school's attention. There were many other complaints. Honestly, I'm not going to get into all of it, and we talk about some of it at the ACLJ website. But the school launched an investigation because they understood they had to take us seriously. And I would say that their investigators that they retained actually did take the investigation seriously. The result was, after a long, prolonged investigation, that action was taken that will not help the student who's already graduated, but thanks to her bravery, it will help other students at New York Law School now and in the future. There were mandates issued to some of these very anti-Semitic groups that if they don't take down certain posts and they don't change certain behaviors, they would be taken away from they would lose their rights at the school, that students might be excluded from the school because of this. And basically, I would say this is a major victory. In fact, they said certain things, even if it's protected free speech, we understand the universities limit speech all the time. You can't say negative things about any particular group based on, or supposedly shouldn't be based on religion or race or national origin. And yet it happens routinely now about Jews at universities. And they're threatened and they feel terrified. And so there were things that seemed, I'll be honest about this, there were things that the school I still feel got away with because you can't prove intent on certain things. But some very important, major forward-looking steps were taken. And I think, and the school is clearly on notice now, and this will result in a better environment, God willing, in the future at the school. And especially the fact that they acknowledge that even things that might be protected technically if sued at because of free speech still would never be accepted if it happened to any other religious or ethnic minority. And therefore, they realized it was inconsistent with the way other students were treated, and they decided to, on a forward-going basis, to not allow that anymore.
Jeff, I think that's a great update, and that's something our audience needs to hear. And it's something also that other students need to hear, that if this is happening, you can get the ACLJ to work. And look, I guess the positive and the negative to this is, of course, as you said, it won't affect the student who had this happen to them, but it will. And it's why it's important. And it's honestly even one of the options of why we're able to do this at no cost and why it's really great for us to be able to do that at no cost is because what it does is it opens up that door to have these, not just conversations, but it can get hostile, it can get heated. But the results can be everlasting. Results that don't just help the one student that had this happen to. Of course, we know it happened to more than one, but the one student we represented. These are big consequences for these schools to take notice, and it can have ripple effects throughout academia.
I think our clients, our students, I think they're brave. I think they recognize, and we're careful. We explain to them that it could have consequences to their careers in the school, sure. and yet they want to move forward with it. They're very brave, and I'm very proud of them, and it does make a difference. And, she knows that she made a difference to other students as well, and that's very important to her as well. And so this, look, I have to say, this I consider a very significant victory because the law school really is making some changes, but I also think that we are going to keep on monitoring it, and other students at the law school now know also to talk to us as things are occurring, and we will be watching the situation.
And I think, Jeff, that's also the point as well. We talk about our clients, and I'm glad you reiterated that point, how brave it is for an individual that can face repercussions from the institution, that can have social repercussions that can come forward, that they have the courage. They are the heroes in this story. They are the ones that see injustice, and they know they want to fight it, and they come to the ACLJ for us to fight alongside them. And they should be proud of themselves that they have the courage to stand up for what's right, to know where to go, to get the resources and the backbone that the ACLJ has to fight with them so that they can make a difference, not just in their lives, but for every other student at that law school. When we talk about even in high schools, in middle schools across this country, those students that have the courage, even sometimes at a young age, to stand up for what's right. Our attorneys talk with their parents and with them about the real ramifications of it. And when they have the courage to move forward, the heroes in the story are the clients. And I just want to reiterate what you were saying, Jeff. The courage of those clients to come forward when they go to aclj.org/help and they get involved and they fight for what's right, that is something to be proud of. And the ramifications down the road are so great for anyone else that could be facing that same type of discrimination going forward.
100%. And, we're the American Center for Law and Justice. And the law, look, let's face it, the law is limited in righteousness and justice. But I think that, thank God, we're able to use the law to really push back against injustice. And I think that we really did move forward here in New York Law School. And we will continue to do this with other schools as well. And we are, even right now, there are other cases that we're dealing with, and there are other students at this law school because of this case who've come forward. We haven't discussed this internally yet, but right now, through this student, have come forward. There may be other allegations of other things that have happened because of this at the same law school that are now coming to our attention.
Jeff, thank you so much for joining us. Of course, our work in the ACLJ team, whether that's in New York, whether that's in Jerusalem, wherever you may need to do what you need to do. And of course, across academia, we appreciate it. And thank you for calling in. I know it's a busy time right now, and we're having some connection potential issues. So I'm going to let you go from there, Jeff. I did want to go ahead and also pivot off real quick and move a little bit back to the talk of the government shutdown, because we've had one call that's been on hold for about half an hour. And again, it's another one of these situations where people are calling in with their frustrations, and I want to make sure that they're heard. Cheryl in Indiana is watching on Facebook. Cheryl, you're on the air.
Thank you. I just called to shine a light on a group of people that are basically being ignored during this shutdown, and that is the Federal Bureau of Prisons. My daughter has to go to work every day with dangerous criminals, and she's not getting paid. And my suggestion is maybe Congress would like to trade places with them.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that is the conversation that's happening a lot of people saying, yeah, they're playing games, it feels like, with a lot of people's future.
I don't know if in your daughter, because the federal prison system, but even some federal prison systems they contract out the actual employees, or certain employees there. But government contractors also aren't getting paid right now. And those big companies, and that might be one that employs your daughter, those big companies are used to this, and so they know how to get through it. It's their employees that have the tougher time. It's not the companies that get the giant contracts. They know it's coming back in a couple months. It's the employees themselves. So yes, after a few weeks of this, it starts to really hurt everyday people. Because you didn't just miss one paycheck. Now you might have missed two paychecks, especially when there's not a lot of hope on the horizon.
Well, and to Cheryl's point as well, just like the air traffic controllers, prison guards, people that work for the Federal Bureau of Prisons, they are already in a very high-stress job.
Yeah.
And a very essential job. Why does the Senate feel like it's a good idea, these Democrats in the Senate that don't want to pass the clean CR, just say, let's add another stress to their life, like where they're going to buy groceries, or how they're going to pay their mortgage, or how they're going to cover basic expenses for their family, while still making them do that high stress, very high risk in many cases job. But we're not going to let them get paid. They'll get back pay. It's fine. They can handle, 30 days without pay. Well, they'll get it eventually. It's ridiculous. That's all I've got to say on it, Logan. I'm very fired up by this topic.
Well, maybe you fired some other people up. Phone lines are open for you, and I want to hear from you. We're headed to the last segment of the day. Went by fast. And I want to hear from you because you're the most important voice in this room. We got 3 lines open for you right now. Cleared some lines out. So 1-800-684-3110. Stay on hold. If you're on hold, we'll get to you. 1-800-684-3110. And of course, it can never be a better time to support the ACLJ than doing so right now. It's an important time in the world. You got to support freedom of speech. You got to support religious liberty. And if you're able to, you become an ACLJ champion. That's someone that gives on a monthly basis. I'm going to ask you to do that. You heard about the big victory we had for our students. And of course, working with that teacher, we need your help. Go to aclj.org. We'll be right back.
The Senate could vote this week on the bill from Republican Senator Ron Johnson to pay essential federal employees during the government shutdown. They're not on furlough, but instead they are working without paychecks.
We forced federal workers to work. We call them accepted, but these are the essential workers, the people that pay your Social Security, federal law enforcement, military, that kind. We force these people to work, and we're not going to give them a paycheck. By the way, there's already a law that we will pay them back pay once the federal government gets reopened. We've got appropriation bills. So this is just a charade. It's a very destructive charade. It's, people are playing games with people's lives. TSA agents shouldn't have to go to food banks. You shouldn't have, as a air traffic controller, drive DoorDash to pay tuition for your daughter. But that's what we're forcing federal employees to do.
I'm in favor of paying the troops. I'm in favor of paying all of the employees that are currently working. And if that procedure or that vote comes before us next week, which I think there's a chance that it will, I will support that. I voted to get onto the defense appropriation bill last week, which means moving forward towards opening the government.
Utterly irresponsible. And this is visiting pain on a whole lot of federal workers for no point whatsoever, other than to throw a political temper tantrum and for Chuck Schumer to prove to his left-wing base that he really, really, really hates Donald Trump. This needs to end. Later today, I'm going to vote for the 12th time Republicans will vote to reopen the government. And at least 11 times in a row, the Democrats keep voting to keep it shut down. They need to end this game.
It's absolutely ridiculous. If they're going to work, we just pay their salary. This is across the board. Whether I like the agency they work for or not, it's anybody who's being forced to work by law. We just give them a paycheck. Just makes perfect sense. Again, it'll just be so unbelievably disappointing if Democrats won't even support that.
Phone lines are jamming up right now, so I'll let you know if they open up, or you can just keep calling at 1-800-684-3110. Of course, I want to hear from you. I always do. But with that, let's go ahead and jump into some phone calls. Let's go to Cliff, who is an ACLJ champion. One of the benefits of being a champion, of course, you're supporting on a monthly basis. We really could not thank you more, Cliff, for doing that. But I like to bump those calls up to the very front of the line. So, Cliff, thanks for staying on hold. Of course, you didn't have to stay on hold as long as a lot of people did because you're an ACLJ champion. Just a little unofficial perk that we offer here. But go ahead.
You hear me, right?
We can hear you.
All right, great. Here I go. I just want to get right to it, and thanks for everything that you do. It's like I feel like I'm in a great novel or a great movie, and I just want to fast forward or follow the pages to the end to see what happens. But meanwhile, I'm stuck in this great novel or movie, and I've been here before. It seems like for decades we're in the same spot, in the same games, the same players are doing the same thing over and over and over again. I'm not worried about what's going to happen because I know, like with a lot of you there, you're knowledgeable of what's going to kind of happen, you know.
Yeah,
people hate these government shutdowns because, again, it has nothing to do really with policy. It has to do with one political party trying to inflict pain on another political party because they've got issues within their political party where harder left is what's happening with the Democrats right now. So they need to look, the current leadership needs to look very tough, even when they're in the minority, even when the legislation adds nothing new by Republicans that already had passed the House, the Senate, and would just keep the budget going so everybody gets paid. They had to take a stand and say, no, we want $1 trillion added to this. And they're the minority party. Let's figure they don't get to add $1 trillion to anything.
I think that's also very important to remember and to remind people that this is a continuing resolution. This isn't new appropriations. This is saying we're keeping everything at the current levels. That doesn't mean this is a 100% Republican-backed bill that is all their spending priorities. It means that it's everything in the federal government. So every Democrat supported program, et cetera, is in that as it has been from the past year. This is the end of the fiscal year. They need a continuing resolution to keep it going, basically status quo. And it's the Democrats that are trying to exploit it at this most tough time because it is the end of the federal government's fiscal year to try and add things to it. That is what makes it different, is that it's not like Republicans are getting reshaping government in their image by this continuing resolution. It's just keeping the government open, and the Democrats are the ones that are trying to change it and make it an appropriations bill.
And I think people feel like they're being used, like that last caller. They feel like they're a pawn in a game that we're not even playing.
Because they are.
That's what I mean. Like, it's a show. It's a performative piece, the government shutdown. Because we know for non-government employees, the pain is very little.
Right.
The pain is public parks are closed or national monuments, those things, which is not fun. I'm not saying it's great, but for most people, that's not a daily issue they're running into.
Exactly.
But for the people that it does hurt, we've heard from them today, and they're on the verge of tears, saying, I've been working as an air traffic controller for 15 years of my life, and now I have a page stub that says 0, and my job is literally life or death that people take for granted because they look at it and go, oh, yeah, we're just used to it being there. And of course, it's one of those things people always want to say, you got to limit the federal government. We believe they do. That's one of those places you do not want to, because they're not just talking about air traffic control. You got to think about all the things that are in the air, birds, all the things they have to do to stop all of this so we can all fly safely. And as most of us fly without even thinking of what the air traffic controllers and the FAA is doing. But those people are literally calling into our show in tears. They're being played and they're being used, and it's very sad, and I really hate it. And we should be thanking them for still showing up and doing their job. And even you can maybe have a little bit more understanding for those that aren't showing up and aren't doing their job. I don't like that part of it because it is an essential need, obviously, but I understand the frustration. Let's go to Marion, ACLJ champion, gets bumped up to the front. Marion in Texas, go ahead.
Yeah, I didn't even have to wait 2 minutes. Thank you. Yeah, I've got a solution to the problem. I think that the Republicans should go in and say that they want to pass a law that no Congress people or senators are going to get paid as long as the shutdown is in effect. And then what's going to happen is there's no way that the Democrats are going to go along with that. So then the Republicans can say, well, we're willing to have our salaries shut down, and the Democrats are the ones that don't want it, so they'll be the ones that put in blame.
Look, Marion, we had Bernie Sanders yesterday saying, because someone suggested it on The View, and he said, well, they got young families. You can't really do that. A lot of them can't do that. And, of course, not talking about all of the people who have called in today who have had all these problems and issues and their own staff. And, of course, you do also have some senators and some saying they are not taking their paycheck. Katie Britt, some of these who I remember have put out statements early on saying, you know what, we're not getting paid if they're not getting paid. So you know what, there are some people who are doing that. Now what that actually looks like, who knows, but they've at least made that claim. Moving on though, Marion, thanks for calling. Becky, Texas, you're on the air.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. If they would not pay Congress, then they would settle this thing quickly. But I'm wondering how it's going to affect government retiree paychecks. Are they going to be withheld also?
Well, let's answer that question for you, Becky. One, I think we could quickly answer, can they do any sort of, because this is the second call to come in, I know it's kind of a little tongue-in-cheek, but is there anything they could actually do in terms of stopping their payments?
Congress has broad authority with writing legislation. I don't think it violates the Constitution in any way. It's not like it's not like Election Day that mandated in the Constitution, they get paid on these days. So I feel like they could, in theory. Yeah. It's never going to happen. You're never going to get that many votes to say, don't pay me, because their self-interest they hold above the American people.
All right, we have 2 minutes. Let's go to Eddie real quick in New Mexico. We'll try to get both calls. I don't know if we'll be able to, but stay on hold either way. Eddie, go ahead.
Thank you. I was wondering, why isn't it that all these people that are just out bald-faced lying about stuff, why aren't they being called out? Because, when they asked Pelosi the other day why they didn't pass the clean bill, she said it's not clean.
Well, of course, Eddie, because it's point of view. And this is a little bit different here. I understand your thought going, well, how can they just bold-faced lie? Well, of course, they're saying, well, from their point of view, they're not lying. Look, we do have freedom of speech here. It's very protected. It's very hard to, especially when we talk about nuanced politics here, to say one side is lying and one side is not. Of course, we can tell you what we believe is true, but they can also push back on that. But yeah, it is what it is. With that being said, let's see, we got 1 minute. Randolph in Texas, you got like 10 seconds. Go ahead, 20 seconds.
Two things. I'm a disabled veteran. My wife has no insurance whatsoever. If they do not act on this insurance thing, my wife will have no insurance, and she has a lot of issues with her medical issues. Second thing, if we keep pitting Democrats with Republicans, get ready for civil war, because that's where we're headed. And God help us if we go there.
Yeah, Randolph, pray that does not happen. Can we answer that question for Randolph or something we can?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think when you've got a situation there where his wife is not under his plan, which I'm not sure, I can't explain all of that. Yeah. Usually you would be, because you take advantage of someone who had a veteran's plan. Families do that. That there are some cost issues right now. Those could be solved with the continuing resolution.
Yeah, so hopefully, Randolph, it does not come to that. We can obviously get this all
and you might
handled soon, and maybe with some
your insurance provider about adding her.
Yeah, of course, that's a good thought. With that, it's going to wrap up today's show. We only got 10 seconds, so I'll just say, think about supporting the work of the ACLJ. Go to aclj.org, take advantage of all the great free content. And of course, that only happens because you support us. Talk to you tomorrow.